So let's start. My name is Dorothea, and I am with the Buddhist Action Coalition. I am joined here by my fellow Buddhist Action Coalition members, Chad, our great Zoom guru, and Bob Schwab, and of course, Leora, who was instrumental in putting this together. He is friends with Aviv and many other activists there in Israel and Palestine. Our agenda is simple. We will have Aviv do a presentation, and then we'll have a conversation with him, questions and answers, etc. And we'll end with ways to support his work through dana, generosity, donations, and also ways to continue being in community with Buddhist Action Coalition and with one another. So we'll share some announcements that people may be interested in. Before anything else, may I invite us to just sit for a minute or two, just to ground ourselves. Thank you, everyone. If I may, before I introduce Aviv, I'd like to share a little anecdote, which I feel speaks to our conversation today here around solidarity. Let's see. Early last year, we at the Buddhist Action Coalition started to talk about getting some people from Israel and Palestine to speak in our speaker series about Engaged Dharma and their work there. And we were finalizing things. The date was set, and I think it was with Isa of Garden of Hope. And then we had Aviv next in line for that speaker series. So all things were set, the date was set, we had an outreach plan, etc. Then October 7th happened. Leora emailed, she was there in Israel at that time. Leora emailed and said something like, obviously this is not the time to have the event. And I promptly replied, I said something like, I'm actually feeling like it's exactly the time we need to hear from folks like Isa. And I had wanted to push for the talk to happen until I realized, and it occurred to me that I wasn't concerned about what will benefit the people in Palestine or Israel, or what was skillful action for the situation. I was more concerned about my own idea of what needs to happen, as if I knew better than the actual peoples on the ground, which happens a lot in this world. other people thinking they know better than those who are actually on the ground. So I did catch myself, thankfully, thank Buddha, and was able to disrupt that self-attached action, self-righteous that it is. And I watched all of the strong, solidified opinions I carry and sat with that and what it really means to be in solidarity, which must be the continuous practice of deep listening. So now here we are, finally, with Aviv, an opportunity, for me at least, to let go of ideas on how to fix the world and listen to the work Aviv and the engaged Dharma community in Israel and Palestine are doing on the ground. So Aviv briefly lives in Jerusalem. He has been practicing Japanese body arts and Vipassana meditation for 30 years and is a Dharma facilitator for the Israeli Dharma Foundation, Tovana. His practice of activism, martial arts, and Dharma came together in 2009 when he co-founded Israeli Engaged Dharma, a group of practitioners and non-practitioners who engage in solidarity actions with Palestinian communities. And since 2012, Aviv has been working as a researcher for the Israeli NGO, Ir Amin, City of Peoples, which challenges Israeli policies in occupied East Jerusalem and works to realize the vision of a shared and equitable city as part of ending the occupation. That is one big work. Aviv, please come on in and share with us.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Dorothea. Your very kind words and the warm reception, and thank you, Liora, for making this connection, and for all of you being here. I'm sure I'm speaking at a time of a tremendous crisis here in Israel-Palestine and devastation. So it's not that I have any answers or any beautiful things to I don't know, to present or to be proud of. But it is indeed very, very important for me, for my partners here, to raise awareness and to be in touch with anyone, with people who care and who want to act and to engage. So thank you very, very much for this opportunity. As Dorothea said, in 2009, a few of us thought to initiate, thought there was a need, a place for a group of practitioners who will bring activism and practice together, and specifically practice and Israeli-Palestinian solidarity. And actually, one of the I don't know, triggers, the things that caused us to do this was a war in Gaza in 2009, one of the first bigger Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip. And in those 15 years, although ourselves as a group, we are active with Palestinian communities in the West Bank, not in Gaza. But in these 15 years, there have been recurring attacks. Can say that they've been two-sided, like there were attacks from Gaza on Israel, from Israel on Gaza. But of course, the power imbalance and the devastation are not at all symmetrical. And each time that has happened, for us, because that's one of the reasons for our initiation, we feel it also in that respect, like, what has our work achieved, where are we going to, and so on. I will try to describe, like, maybe I'll say what I thought for our time together. I will try to describe some of what we do, and also how we can connect our action to Dharma and to practice. And hopefully I'll be able to do it, like, not to take up too much time. Let's hope 20-25 minutes, and then we can open it for whatever questions and so on. Okay. So for us, it was for us, I mean, we were maybe 4 or 5 people, friends from practicing Dharma together, and each of us had like personal involvement in activism. And it was very clear, or maybe I'll start. You will remember that it is a group effort and so on. I will speak about myself. For me, it was very, very clear that one, we all share responsibility since we live in this land. Like whatever is happening here, we are responsible for. It's not that we are disconnected from it somehow. And on the contrary, the goodness that I felt or I feel in my life was a very powerful force for me to say, okay, cannot be that I'm keeping this goodness for myself. I wanna act to respond to suffering, to reduce violence, and so on. And also a very deep conviction that Dharma practitioners and especially the Dharma community has a very important role to play, that with the qualities that we nurture and the abilities we have, and also the sociological, we represent economically and socially, and in terms of the education that we were privileged to receive. Again, that we have both the ability, the capacity, and the responsibility to act. So that was the idea, and that was what we called out for. And one way or another, we got involved, or we got in touch with 2 Palestinian villages. One of them is, both are very, very dear to me now, 15 years later, but one of them was almost at home. It's like a village by the name of Walaje, at the edge of Jerusalem, between Jerusalem and Bethlehem. And since I live in Jerusalem, it's a 10 minutes drive away from my home. And since it's on a hilltop, then it's very visible from many, many parts of Jerusalem, and also basically from the street where I live. And this is something I think very telling, that you could be a Jerusalemite, you could maybe even live in Jerusalem all of your life. And if you're an Israeli, you will have no idea that a place called Walaje exists. And certainly you will not notice it when you just go about your daily business. And now I see as I said, I see the village from everywhere I go to in Jerusalem, from a variety of neighborhoods, from the president's residence, it can be seen, from the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, from the Hebrew University, from everywhere it can be seen, but no one sees it. And it's no one, when I say no one, I mean Israelis don't see it. And it's very, very telling, it's really significant. Are we aware or are we not? Or what are we aware of? And it's, the village is right before our eyes. I mean, it's a bit in the distance, but still it's visible and we don't see it. And things are happening there. The separation barrier was built on village lands, causing tremendous damage. There are home demolitions, families losing their homes because the Israeli government claims that the homes are illegal, and the homes are illegal because the Israeli government doesn't want Palestinian homes to be legal. So homes are being demolished. And so it really makes a difference. Are you aware of it or are you not? These are some of the things that are happening in Walaje. The other village that we got in touch with is not so close to Jerusalem. It's closer to Tel Aviv, maybe 30 minutes drive away from Tel Aviv, by the name of Deir Istia. Also, it's not necessarily a well-known village, but there our action or our involvement began joining olive harvests with Palestinian families, Palestinian farmers, and through that developing a relationship. And maybe the first challenge for us, one of the first challenges was, will people join us? Like we're reaching out to Sangha members. We're telling them, hey, let's go and either harvest olives in Deir Istia, or there's a demonstration against the separation barrier in Walaje. And will they come? I mean, why is it at all connected to Sangha, to Dharma, to practice, and so on? Like, I don't know, matter of fact, some people come, and 15 years on later, we're certainly not a big group. We're very, very small in comparison to Dharma, to the so-called, I don't know, mainstream or ordinary Dharma sanghas. We're a core group of maybe just less than 10 people in the core group, and we organize several activities a month where we'll have like 10 to 20 people coming. And on our mailing list, I mean, we have a WhatsApp group. So on our WhatsApp group, there are 300 people. Okay, so to give you like an impression. And why will people come? Why will people join? So one, I guess for some of them, maybe politically they identify this is something they want to do, and they're happy to do it as a group of not necessarily practitioners. Not all of us are practitioners today, but as a group that knows how to support each other and keep an approach of awareness and I feel like compassion is a very big word, but of tenderness and of care, going into a situation of conflict and violence and aggression. So I think this is like one of the like really to put the finger on the big challenge. As Dharma practitioners, I mean, you can think how you define, how you call your practice, like what does the practice cultivate? But I imagine that for most of us, the qualities that are cultivated are of harmony and non-violence and of care and metta and compassion and so on. How can we act in a situation of conflict, and the conflict also has really physically violent manifestations. So there is like something, you want harmony, you come into a situation of disharmony. And I will try to describe some of those situations. And today, you know, when we're 9 months after October 7th, you know, it's a disaster for the massacre itself in Israel, in the Israeli towns and kibbutzim is a disaster like Israel probably never suffered. And since then, for 9 months, it is wielding destruction and devastation like unprecedented in the history of this conflict on more than 2 million Gazans. So we are really completely unable to claim that our choice to engage with this conflict is I don't know, successful. Certainly did not transform the situation in the last 15 years. It has only gotten worse and worse and worse. So sometimes you may think, okay, I have I have this understanding, the practice is guiding me, well, whatever I'm cultivating through the Dharma, I will be able maybe to transform or to change difficult situations for the better. We cannot claim anything like that. So maybe I'll try to describe different situations. And then also how for me Dharma is manifested in them. So in Walaje, basically, I described two of the big challenges for the village. Separation barrier. Israel has built a barrier, part wall, part fence, between it and the West Bank. It's actually not exactly between. It's most of it is built inside the West Bank, and I don't know, the claimed reason for the construction is the Second Intifada, Palestinian attacks in Israel, bombings in buses, in restaurants that have brought the deaths of roughly 1,000 Israelis in a period of 4 or 5 years. So most Israelis will view the barrier as a security need and as an act of self-defense. Those of us who are more aware, we recognize, one, that the barrier is built in a way that aims to promote Israeli control of the West Bank and basically Israeli oppression of Palestinians. And specifically in Walaje, it has caused the uprooting of huge areas of olive groves, like source of income for this agricultural village, and also has cut the village off from most of its agricultural lands. So that's basically when the barrier was being built, that's how we first got in touch with the village. And then I also mentioned the issue of home demolition. So basically, that's also true for the United States. It's probably true for most countries. People can't just build homes as much or wherever they wish, they want. There's a planning and building law, and you have to abide according to the law. But since, I mean, what is the meaning of occupation or apartheid, or you can use whichever word you want, the political power is concentrated on the Israeli side. And Palestinians do not have political representation. Yeah, they're not citizens. They don't have voting rights. So the political system basically is free to act as it likes upon them. And for all kinds of reasons, maybe it's worth saying them. The discrimination in planning and building is one of the huge areas of discrimination. Like if you understand, okay, why is it bad for Palestinians to live under Israeli occupation, even when, let's say, there is not terrible amounts of violence. then the issue of discrimination planning will be one of the really, it's been there for 75 years since the establishment of the state. And so, and why is that? Basically for two reasons, because our conflict here in this land is about control of land and about demography, control of population. So planning and building is a really crucial way in controlling both these areas. And maybe making this long explanation much shorter, it's enough to say Israel makes it very, very difficult for Palestinians to obtain building permits. And actually in Walaje, it makes it impossible for Palestinians to obtain building permits, which means that anyone who builds a home violates the law. And if you build a so-called illegal home, then the state comes at you and demolishes your home. Okay, so you can imagine the situation there. A third area in Walaje has to do, I mentioned that the barrier cut off the village from most of its agricultural lands. And what in that sense, so it's a big loss for Walaje, but also Walaje is an amazing place. And too often we speak about the discrimination and the suffering, the oppression and the suffering, and we forget the beauty and the I don't know, the knowledge, the wisdom, the heritage of very special places. So Walaje has a heritage, it keeps alive a heritage of traditional agriculture that has been probably going on more or less in the same way for centuries, if not for thousands of years. So the beautiful, amazing olive terraces and a lot of knowledge regarding traditional techniques of agriculture, which is not industrialized and so on. And it's the only place of its kind in Jerusalem. So even 100 years ago, maybe even less than 100 years ago, there were many such villages, and they have either been uprooted, for example, in the 1948 war, or modernization and urbanization have changed the lifestyle. In Walaje, it is being kept. And one of the, so we are involved in all these dimensions, the barrier and the home demolitions. But one of the beautiful things is working with the farmers in the lands that Israel has been trying to take away from them, and basically assisting in all kinds of ways for farmers to stay in their lands through coming and working together with them in agricultural lands, and organizing workshops for Israelis to learn the Palestinian knowledge regarding agriculture, and also selling the produce in Jerusalem. And this is, on the one hand, it's something very, very small, like, okay, so we sell some tomatoes every week in Jerusalem. But basically, a small community has formed around that of a few hundred Israelis who every week, even if they don't buy every week they get an update about what's for sale, and we use the update also to let them know what else has been happening in the village, and a few dozens buy every week, and so on. So it's a source of income, and it's a source of connecting Israelis to people in the village. And then when the opportunity arises, there's all kinds of ways to give further support. And maybe to connect it to the current situation, the war is happening in Gaza. It's not happening in Jerusalem. It's not happening in Al-Walaje is the name. It's not happening in the West Bank. But West Bankers, since October, West Bankers have been barred from working in Israel. And because the Israeli economy is much stronger than the Palestinian one, and actually the Palestinian economy is very much dependent on the Israeli economy, there's about 100,000 Palestinians who in the past, in like a year ago, were working in Israel. And now for 9 months, they have not been able to go and work. So, and this is, you know, this is terrible for the families, which are poor to begin with. And many such families in Walaje not being able to work for 9 months is a terrible, terrible problem. So the buying of the produce, of the agricultural produce, is more important than ever. Maybe I'll turn to Deir Istia. As I said, there we were most of our action was working with the farmers, and it used to be a very, very quiet area, as far as you can say quiet about a situation of occupation. But in comparison to other areas, there was not much settlement expansion, there were not many clashes, there wasn't much violence, and so on. So it was really a good way for us to invite practitioners who maybe, you know, have all kinds of reasons to feel uncomfortable, to feel unsafe, either coming to Palestinian places or coming too close to clashes and so on. It was a good place to start. And the very significant change in the last 4 years is how gradually, you know, and we can see the change year by year, the area has become more violent, with outposts being established. And for those of you who don't necessarily know all the different definitions, all settlements are illegal by international law. Outposts are also illegal by Israeli law. And despite the fact that they are illegal, they enjoy very close support and assistance from the Israeli army, the Israeli government. And usually the outposts are violent. You know, settlers are not necessarily involved in violence, sometimes yes. But the outposts are established with the purpose of expelling Palestinians from big areas around the outposts, and they do it through violence. So the fact that in the last 4 years, 3 or 4 outposts have been established around Deir Istia means a dramatic change. And I should mention, especially today with a very dramatic incident that took place for you in the United States, that the change began 4 years ago with the publishing of Trump's so-called peace plan, basically a plan to solidify Israeli control of the West Bank and turn it into annexation. It didn't go anywhere, it didn't happen, and so on. We could imagine that it was thrown to the garbage, but maybe not. Maybe God forbid Trump is coming back. But for the Israeli government, it was basically a green line to really do very dramatic things on the ground, and in Deir Istia it has very much been felt. So we have started to encounter more and more violence from settlers and from soldiers who assist them on the ground. And especially since October 7th, basically the olive harvest season begins in October. So the Hamas attack and then the war really happened as everyone was ready. All the farmers and their families we're ready to go out to pick the olives, and it's an enormous event in Palestinian society. You know, it's a tradition, it's a heritage, and the harvesting of the olives can take, if you don't have too many trees, it will take you a few days. If you have more trees, it can take you for weeks. And it's also a source of income, but it's also very much part of the identity. And the war disrupted it completely, which may be strange for you to hear, because again, the war is in Gaza, not in the West Bank. And this I should point to the Hamas attack and the horrific crimes and violence that the Hamas combatants did, put the whole or more, many in the Israeli society into, you know, terror, basically, you know, deep fear, and that such attacks can now happen anytime, anywhere. If they surprised us in the south, it can happen anywhere. So there's a big, a deep feelings of panic and of worry and anxiety for Israelis in Jerusalem, which is a binational city, in the West Bank, with the settlers being very concerned, very afraid of maybe whatever attacks will come from neighboring Palestinian villages. And very quickly, this fear is being manipulated, is being misused, is being turned into an excuse to attack Palestinians. So for years, we knew that settlers were targeting agricultural areas. When I say settlers, it's settler organizations, and it's also political parties and parts of the government, okay? We're targeting agricultural areas in Deir Istia, but they couldn't really, they didn't have a legal way to realize what they wanted, to carry it out. And this security crisis gave the perfect excuse. So Palestinians are a danger, they're a security threat, and any Palestinian farmer, regardless of his age, can be a small boy, it can be a very old person, can be a female, a male. They're basically either they're there to murder Israelis, or they are there to gather information which will allow murder of Israelis, and therefore Palestinians cannot be allowed. Cannot be allowed where? Cannot be allowed to gather their olives. And this madness, this crazy attitude that because Israelis say they are afraid, they are allowed to threaten Palestinians, to attack them, to push them out of their olive groves, to shoot at them. This has been taking place all over the West Bank. On the one hand, it means that our presence was very important. There were many families, many Palestinian families, who would not go to their lands because of fear, and they would lose the harvest unless we came with them. And on the other hand, when we would come with them, many times, roughly, let's say 50% of the times, we would be also attacked, and in ways that, I mean, thank God we were never physically hurt, but we were not necessarily able to create the situation, the conditions that the families we were with would be able to stay and to gather their olives. And I should stress, maybe that's the last thing I will say before I try to speak a little bit about practice and about Dharma. I should stress that all of the situation that I'm describing, that Israelis are full of fear and hatred towards Palestinians, and Palestinians are full of fear and hatred towards Israelis. And then we and our Palestinian partners, we choose to work together, to be together. I mean, I'm coming to it. We as a group, we're coming to it, very spontaneously. We don't feel it's something I don't know to brag about, but it's really, really exceptional in these terrible months in Israel and Palestine, where the prevailing sentiment is very, very tribal. You either belong to our tribe or you're the enemy. So Palestinians willing to accept us, an Israeli group, in the village, and trusting us and wanting us to come, and sharing their views and their feelings and so on, and us wanting to come and coming and trusting them, and and everyone is afraid. When we meet before we go out to the village, there's a lot of fear for us. What will we encounter there? Who will attack us? Will it be Israeli soldiers, Israeli settlers? Maybe there will be a Palestinian who is not happy about us. And for the people in the village, the Palestinians, for whom it's very, very frightening to go out to their lands, and they know nowhere is safe. Nowhere is safe. And when you feel unsafe, when there's an issue of insecurity, then who do you go to? You go to the authorities, right? To the court, to the police, to the army. There are all these bodies, big brothers that are supposed to keep the order and justice and so on. And there is no one to turn to. I mean, there was never anyone to turn to also in previous years, but now it's like it's breaking all records. We were shot at, and we could not even we have nowhere to. We filed a complaint. We got a response that the army is not going to investigate it, and we're Israelis. So when Palestinians are attacked, it is much worse. So just to conclude, okay, where does practice come in all of that? Because really, all the things that I described, you could hear, or maybe some of you have heard, certainly if you read about it, you can read from other activists who are not practitioners and so on. So our action on the ground, it's I don't know, it's a down-to-earth activism. But as I guess you heard, we have a lot to deal with. We have to deal with, we encounter, we come in touch with people, with groups who don't like us, and who maybe we don't like them, and they have their opinion. We have opinions about each other, and it's very difficult. There's no common ground, or very little common ground. And if the situation is tense or hostile or violent and so on. So, coming into such situations with a deep conviction that I am not here because I'm against anyone, because I'm not going to allow my anger to lead me. A very deep awareness of actually the damage that anger and certainly animosity or violence creates. It allows us to move around, to be, to interact, to act in a different way. Not necessarily more efficient. I mean, it's not that it doesn't solve anything. It doesn't externally, it doesn't dissolve any aggression against us. But it's very important for us to keep this approach. And the situation is very, very challenging. So it's not that we succeed. So there is anger, and there can be harsh words coming from us. Hopefully, not too many times, but it can happen, and there can be very, very strong emotions. And we know that these are things we have to work with, we have to be aware of, and see how we can make ourselves a bit more free from these tendencies. This is something that we can do as individuals. Each one of us has their awareness and their intention and so on, but certainly we do it as a group, and we take time before we go out to action. We take time to remind ourselves to build our intention, and at the end of the day, at the end of the activity, we also take time to reflect together, to share, to support each other. Not only anger, yeah, I mentioned fear. There are many, many opportunities to feel afraid, certainly in anticipation, like when we meet, before we actually head out to the village. And also, unfortunately, when we encounter hostility, again, I described, it can be settlers, it can be soldiers. And we try as much as we can to respect our fear. Not the fact that we very much care, and we feel it's really, really important that we arrive in the villages and that we stand together with partners, Palestinian partners. We don't want to force ourselves, and certainly we don't want to force group members. So some of it is like, you can say guiding rules, like we make sure that everyone understands that they don't need to put themselves in situations where they feel uncomfortable. Let's say there's a demonstration and the soldiers are violent. And of course, the closest you stand to the soldiers, you're more at risk either to be arrested or to be assaulted by them. So we make a point that everyone knows they can stay far away. Like if someone feels fine with being more in the front, that's okay. And if someone needs to be far away in the back, that's also perfectly fine. And it's not that one is more right or more important and so on than the other. So that's one way. But fear is always there. And we basically give time to acknowledge it, to feel it, to be with it, and give it space. And there are many, many other qualities, but maybe I should end with basically the enduring pain, emotional pain. The situation is immensely painful. Usually, almost always, the suffering is not it's not ourselves as Israeli activists that are directly suffering. The suffering is of Palestinians who, I described some of the violence against them. But after 15 years of action, some of these people are people who are very dear friends that we have known for many, many years. In a period of 15 years, it's people that I saw their children grow up. I saw people getting married, many, many things. And also they saw things happening in my life. Many heart-to-heart talks, many events that we went through together and brought us really, really close to each other. And so to feel this care towards people, it's much more than a political act or just an act of some theoretical activism. It's very, very personal, and we meet every time we meet our helplessness, our inability really to advance an end to this oppression and an end to this violence. And you know, all these things, either the helplessness, the frustration, and certainly the fear and the anger, can really push people away. Like you can say, I've had it, I can't deal with it anymore. It's very easy to become burnt out. And so again, we need to develop ways to take care of ourselves, of our hearts, to nurture ourselves, and again, the practice and the sangha and the mutual care is a deep source of nurturing. So maybe I will stop here. And I'll be very, very happy. If you want me to speak about any more things, please tell me.
Aviv, thank you so much. And perhaps before we open up for conversation and question and answer, let's just pause. That was beautiful sharing, Aviv. Thank you so much. So let's just pause for a moment. Thank you. So I know you all have a lot of questions, maybe. If you would like to speak, feel free to raise your hand. Michelle.
Well, Aviv, first of all, I really appreciate your presentation. I thought it was very beautiful. And I was particularly struck when you were talking about what you see when you're in Jerusalem, that you acknowledge the lives of each Palestinian. And that was very, very beautiful. And how brave your Sangha is going into each village. What I objected to was, and I have to tell, you know, I think you're probably I'm an Ashkenazi Jew like you. And I think for those who don't understand Israeli history, I think unintentionally you demonized Israel too much because people don't have the full context. And without having that context, I think you're feeding into this whole thing about Israel needs to disappear, which I don't think you mean at all. So you start with 1947, but you forget that the reason why Israel is so traumatized is that, first of all, we have Jewish trauma because of everything that's happened to us. Not that it excuses anything, but people don't know about Jewish trauma, how we all got to where we are. And when Israel begins in 1947, how many times did the Palestinians refuse a country? Not that it excuses anything that's what's happening, but there is context. And then all the attacks on Israel, which you know, people, so this generation doesn't know that. So I think context is important. And again, it doesn't change what's happening now, but it does affect the story somewhat. And then my last point is that when we talk about the settlers up on the West Bank and the Israeli government, I think it's really important to point out that this is a Trumpian type government right now, that this government does not represent the best of Israel, that this is Netanyahu and a coalition and these crazy right-wing fundamentalists, which is what could happen in the United States. That is not Israel, at least not the way I understand it. And I think that's really, really important because then we're feeding into the anti-Semitism that is going crazy in the United States. So I just wanted to clarify that, but then still underscore how beautiful what you said otherwise in terms of seeing each person as a person. So that's what I had to say, and I hope that was okay.
Yes, thank you very much, Michelle. I think you're raising important issues, and I hope I can address them in a good way. So one of the things that's for me, it was even a starting point. I spoke about the responsibility I felt, but certainly through my involvement, through my engagement, I'm very deeply aware that I'm part of the conflict. Okay, it's not that, I don't know, there is a conflict, it's there because of other people. I'm very much part of it, and my actions can aggravate it. Okay, I mean, if my intentions are good, hopefully my actions will not aggravate it. But even so, my actions can aggravate it. And when I want people, for example, yourselves, to understand what the Israeli government is doing, and I will say more than that, what Israeli society has chosen to do, and I describe what I described to you, I very much risk creating an impression, an image for yourselves of good and evil. And and usually our mind works like that. The good is on one side, the evil is on the other side, is on the other side, and that makes things very, very simple. Okay. Now I'm an Israeli, so it's difficult for me to really feel that Israelis are evil. Okay, as if I allow myself a bit to say it smilingly, some of my best friends are Israelis. Okay. So I very much acknowledge what you said, Michelle. On the other hand, Israel is committing atrocities. These atrocities have to stop. If we are able to stop them while acknowledging the humanity and the rights of both peoples, Israelis and Palestinians, and not hating and not garnering animosity towards either, that's the best. But the atrocities are being committed and they have to stop. You know, it's not that any of us can really stop them, but we should ask ourselves, okay, what is the thing that I can do? What is the small contribution that I can make? And okay, take care not to demonize anyone and not to demonize Israelis. The one thing that all this, I think it's Buddhism 101. Okay, when I have an opinion, okay, when it will always be partial. It will always be one-sided. And the stronger I feel about my opinion or about things, I risk even demonization. So I should be aware of it, and all of us should. Just because we care, we should be aware of it. People who don't care will not demonize, but they also will not stop the atrocities. We need to care in order to act, and we need to watch out that our care, doesn't, I don't know, that is not misguided. The one thing that I don't agree with you, Michelle, and this is something that many Israelis think like you, many Israelis who oppose the occupation and maybe even are appalled by things that are happening today, they blame things on Netanyahu and they blame things on Israelis, on settlers, sorry. And as you said, it's not really the best part of Israeli society. I'm really sorry that I beg to differ. I have to differ. There are elections in Israel that Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza don't have the right to participate in, also in Jerusalem, don't have the right to participate in, but the government manifests the desire, the wish, the opinions of the Israeli voter. This government is the most extreme we ever had. Today, it's probably very unpopular in Israel, and if there were elections, it would lose. But like 2 years ago and 5 years ago and 10 years ago, the Israeli public didn't care about the occupation. We didn't think that the occupation had to stop, didn't think that the siege on Gaza had to stop, was very happy with things continuing on and on and on, and basically indifferent to Palestinian suffering, and at the, I don't know, basically supporting the Israeli colonial settlement enterprise.
Thank you, Aviv, and thank you, Michelle. Regina, and then Claudia. Regina, please.
Aviv, thank you so much. Rav Todot. This is the second time that I have been honored to hear you speak. And so I have one question that's related to a question I asked you before that I'll get to, which is I love to cut to the Donna chase. But before that, I have read about in a couple of places about an encounter you had with one of your Palestinian friends, an older man, very active, who kind of like burst forth with a sense of the impossibility and the hopelessness of the entire project. And you have written about how you simply listened to him. And my understanding is that simply in the listening, that there was a kind of transformation that happened. And I would love you to share about that if you would. And because I always want to correct and set things straight and say yes, but, and just the ability to bear witness in that way, I would love to hear more about. And the other is, which I hope will come by the end, is how we can bear witness through our wallets on this side of the ocean in a tangible way. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for, I don't know, coming to listen again. So really, I mentioned it before, that we have deep relationships with some Palestinian partners, and it's crazy to say, but it's very, very rare. There are not many Israelis and Palestinians who have close relationships. It wasn't always like that. I mean, of course, there are Jews and Arabs, Israeli citizens. There's segregation there, but it's not as bad. But after 1967, the first few decades, some people did cultivate relationships. It wasn't the majority, but it wasn't as rare. Today, it just doesn't exist. Why would it exist? Like you cannot keep an occupation for 57 years and people will succeed to feel close to each other. But so for us, it's really an enormous privilege. And I don't recall, I'm not sure exactly which occasion that I wrote about you referred to, Regina, but I will say a few things in general. One, that personally for me, these relationships are very, very healing. Okay. I'm an Israeli. I went in the Israeli education system. I was in the Israeli army. I'm a very, very today maybe not typical, but my background is very typical Israeli, with all the stereotypes that have to do regarding Palestinians. So for me to feel comfortable with Palestinians, to acknowledge, that their wisdom and their big hearts, and to feel close to people, and actually to love them and to really, really care about them, is something that, I don't have a better word. It's really, really healing. Also in situations of war, like I had on occasions when wars like this, I mean, not as bad as this one, but wars in Gaza, and everyone is just terrified and angry and so on. And to sit in a Palestinian friend's home, they cannot sit in my home because they cannot enter Israel. But for me to go into a village and to sit in a friend's home and to watch together television, scenes from the war and so on, and to see that myself sitting with them and speaking together and so on, that the war is not the only option. It doesn't have to be like that. Of course, for Palestinians, this life is devastating. The amazing people that I know, every once in a while, I think what they would have been able to create in their lives if they were living as free human beings. And to compare it to the challenges and to the things that they actually have to deal with, I don't know how I would be able to bear such a life. So because we are close, I also have this privilege to hear from them about their pain and despair. And I don't have anything to offer. I don't have anything to offer. I mean, what can we do? What we do is very small. It's also it's work to remember that despite being small, it's also meaningful, but it's very, very small. And I learned from an Israeli woman, from someone who I really, really admire. I learned how important it is to just listen and to be with people in their pain and to share their pain, not to run away from it. And as you said about yourself, not to quickly try to fix, because I cannot fix, or at least a lot of it I cannot fix. And it really demands of myself, some stability and some letting go and so on. So in many of the things that I told you, activism is a very, very deep practice. I find that for myself, it's my way of practice. Today, much more than meditation, I received a lot from meditation and from other disciplines. But certainly, if you look at it that way, if you choose to do it that way, being engaged in the world and working for the benefit of society is a spiritual practice. And thank you so much for asking about the Dana. I will tell you about our group. We're not a registered group. We never bothered to register ourselves, and we're a small group and so on. And we're able to do what we're doing without any funds. So ourselves, we are all volunteers. And we're able to do things that we feel are meaningful enough and don't require funds. But of course, funds are necessary, and bigger NGOs use funds in very, very important ways. Currently, as I mentioned, how Palestinian economy and Palestinian families are hit hard economically because of not being allowed to work in Israel during the war. Then that's really a huge crisis, both in Deir Istia and in Walaje. And we have not made big campaigns to raise donations to give to Palestinian families, but we have done that on a few occasions. And any Dana you would like to give, to donate, will be used for that to support families either in Wallachia or Deir Estia.
Thank you, Aviv. And for everyone, the information how to give donations is in the chat, and we will keep posting that. Thank you, Jenny, for putting that in there. We have about 15 minutes to go. We will try to get to Claudia, Lenny, and Beverly. So if we could just focus and go to the core. Claudia, please join us.
Thank you so much. I will try. Mostly I want to thank you. I mean, in times that feel so hopeless, your example is what's hopeful, and the example of how powerful this practice is, because not anybody could do what you're doing, and not even everybody certainly doesn't have the courage to even talk about it. So I thank you so much. I'm wondering a couple of things, that the idea of the Dharma social practice creating change, maybe that's what needs to be let go of. One of the points I heard from you, any income is good, is helpful for people who've lost their sustenance, and any connection is good, is helpful. So I'm wondering if that can loosen things up a little bit, of letting go of the notion that it'll grow and things will change. You know, the last page of this 400-page book that I read, and I could barely get through more than 2 pages at a time because it was so disturbing and so much filled with violence and hatred from, what, 1917? Violence was never far away. No end to their conflict was in sight. And that was 2017, where he left off. And yet in the Buddhist practice, we talk about there's always change, but, you know, maybe the idea of change is just that little bit of income today and that connection today, and that is valuable. The other thing, I have a couple of questions that you may or may not choose to address, but, you know, it's always easy to point the finger at what's going on over there, but the analogies are equally heartbreaking for this country, from top to bottom, from the public housing, the integration segregation, the unemployment, the courts. I mean, and so I heard you loud and clear. I am responsible, period. And I appreciate that. And you know, it's a burden and an opportunity. So the 2 questions, one you've kind of answered, but if there's anything remaining of one of the biggest lessons that you have learned, or even particularly since October 7th, whatever, of this year, biggest lesson for you. And also the issue of language. That was one thing mentioned in that book that I didn't hear you speak about. But what was mentioned in the book was that if you're not speaking the country's native language, you're missing a lot. And I'm wondering if that has come up in your work as well. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Claudia. It was really, you know, you moved my heart. So before your question, the thing you referred to in how small actions or small changes, how they're important. Basically, I very much agree, and we were in for so many years in the situation that the occupation is not ending, and we don't have a strategy, also like a realizable strategy to end it. Being able to acknowledge the meaning and the importance of smaller actions was very, very important. And I was lucky enough to feel that, yeah, I can say why what we do, why it matters, why it counts. Whereas yeah, many people, many activists have to deal with a lot of frustration and helplessness. So I very much accept that. October 7th, like this year, these 9 months have been extremely challenging for that approach for me. Basically, the devastation is so huge and not ending; it's just getting worse. So that that the small actions feel more insignificant than ever. We are acting. I don't even feel I don't have the confidence to say we are doing what we can. Maybe we could do more. But we are doing. And today really everything pales in comparison to what happens, and it's more difficult for me to express the notion, the approach that you have expressed. The two questions regarding language. I began this activism not being able to speak, not speaking Arabic. And today I speak Arabic. I have what to improve, but I converse and so on. And as you said, it's really one of the joys that this engagement has brought for me. Both in terms of it's a beautiful language, and it allows me to communicate with people who don't necessarily speak Hebrew or whatever, and also it expresses the culture and wisdom and so on. So it's really a treasure. And I'm sorry, can you remind me the first question?
I think you answered in terms of the most important learning that you've had, particularly recently.
Yeah, I mean, but recently it's as I said, and maybe going back in that sense to the point that Michelle raised, we need things to change, certainly for the welfare of Palestinians and for the rights of Palestinians, but also for the welfare of Israelis. Like it's very difficult to imagine like what kind of state Israel is going to be after this war.
Thank you, Aviv.
Thanks.
We have less than 10 minutes. Lenny, and if I may, I would like to ask everyone if it's okay that we extend a little bit, a few minutes over our allotted time, if that's okay. Lenny, please.
Hi there. I am a Buddhist. I practice in the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition, Plum Village tradition of Engaged Dharma as well. So this was amazing. To make it quick, my question is, if you could expand a little bit more or give examples on how you and the group navigated or worked with the anger, fear, and pain that you experienced during the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny. And maybe I will start by saying that I mean, Thich Nhat Hanh has always been a huge inspiration for me. And actually, our website, on the top of the website, there's also a quote from one of the many wise sayings of Thich Nhat Hanh. But only recently, I think a couple of years ago, I discovered his diaries from the 1960s, basically from the Vietnam War and from his time in Vietnam during the war. And these diaries express a lot of anguish and a lot of difficulty. And for me, they have been inspiring no less than the beautiful expressions of peace and of love in Thich Nhat Hanh's writings. This is something that I feel that Dharma groups, or at least local Dharma groups here in Israel, are not so good in acknowledging. Like, we're always looking for the harmony. So for whoever is interested, the diaries are called Fragrant Palm Leaves. And as for how we are dealing with them, I mean, it's partly personal and it's partly group work. So in terms of like things that I tend to do, I think I will mention two things. One is I feel lucky that it's easy for me to turn, I mean, anger in senses of activism. I have much more, I tend to feel sadness more than anger. And I feel that it's much less destructive. And sadness is something that I'm much better able at carrying and allowing it to be and to be with me. It doesn't crush me. It doesn't paralyze me, and it doesn't make me reactive in the way that anger can make me reactive. So I allow myself to be sad and to feel pain, and then I have less need of being angry. Anger will rise for me in real-time situations. Things will make me angry, but on long term, yeah, it very quickly transforms into sadness, which as I said, I feel is healthier. And the other thing that very much helps me is I take care to notice the beauty that is present in situations that are either painful or can make me angry. And the beauty can be a beauty of landscape, and it can be the beauty of people and relationships and things that, even if they are very partial, but things that have been achieved. And it takes a practice, it takes intention to turn the attention towards these parts when there is so much that we are not happy with. As a group, as I said, we build our intention before action to remind ourselves that we can meet hostility, and we will also meet the reactions inside of us. We invite each other to calm each other. Like, let's say I get angry, so someone can intervene and help me calm down. And we take the time to process and to share whatever feelings rose for us. So we learn, and I can say that in the first years, there would be, I would express anger at all kinds of situations. That today I learned how I can be in touch with the same situations, and they don't trigger the anger in me in the same way, and it's better for myself. It's also many times the situation develops in a much better way. I will say that I don't judge anyone for becoming angry. There are all the reasons in the world to become angry, and it's not wholesome, but there are all the reasons there. So that's also important to keep in mind. If we come in touch with this reality, it will there will be all kinds of negative emotions that come up, but we can deal with them.
Thank you, Aviv. Thank you, Lena. Two more questions, if you don't mind, Aviv and everyone. I have Beverly and then Adrian. You put your hand down, but I got you as the last one, Adrian. Beverly, please. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Before we go to Beverly, people are asking if there are other ways to donate, Aviv, other than PayPal, because some people don't have.
There are, as I said, we're not too good on that. I don't know what to say. How do you donate in the United States? What mechanisms are there?
Can I just bow in and say it is possible to donate through PayPal without a PayPal account, but generally there needs to be a link that has an option for either a PayPal account or pay with a debit or credit card, and that's what I'm looking for.
And we didn't share the link?
The link that I got in the newsletter led to a general PayPal link. It was not a link to your particular account.
Okay.
Sorry for breaking in. I just wanted to clarify that.
So maybe
leave it to you, Regina, to type in. I love you.
So we
Thank you
can
so much.
continue to speak, and I will try to go into my PayPal user and see if I can find the link and put it in the chat box.
Great. Please pardon us, Aviv. All we had was the username and the account username. We didn't have the link.
Probably it's my fault. Yeah, I'll try to fix that.
Okay. Beverly, please.
Good morning from here in California. Thank you so much, Aviv. Listening to you helps me to have more equanimity, if not acceptance. And one of the things I've been thinking about is how active the Jewish community in the United States was in the civil rights movement, and you know how much Jews understood what it was like to be looked down upon. And from that, you know, in a way, I feel like Israelis should be the last person on earth to treat the Palestinians the way they've been treated, but also knowing the history and, you know, that, you know, I can understand the fear. But what troubles me is I realize that there's so much racism. And I have a brother who's a nice guy who has become ultra-Orthodox. And right after October 7th, when I only once tried to say something about what about the Palestinians, his reaction was, "Do you want to see me dead?" And his belief is that if we give them an inch, they are going to kill all the Jews in the world. And how do we, and on the other hand, I remember a time when my grandparents had a candy store in the Bronx in New York, and they talked about all the Negro people who were moving into the neighborhood and how things were going downhill. And one day a Black man walked into the store, into their candy store, and I'm like watching to see what's going to happen. And he walks over to the counter and my grandfather, and he throw their arms around each other. And they were old friends. And I realized that the bad people are only the ones you don't know. And so my question is, how can we find ways to make connections between the ultra-Orthodox, the settlers, you know, so that they can not think of Palestinians as a bunch of lying Arabs, which is what I kind of get. So that's kind of what my question is how can, I mean, I know some Israelis have reached out, but this particular group, it's really hard for them.
Yes, I wish I had an answer. I mean, it's the big question that we're just going further and further away from finding an answer to. I can say two things. One, there are Israeli groups and Israeli and Palestinian groups that this is the focus of their work, like how to create a transformation in consciousness, in awareness, in perceptions. So there is knowledge. Some of it is scientific, as much as these things can be scientific. And there is work that is being done. Not that there is any simple answer. Also, again, I think from a Dharma perspective, it's an interesting thing to say. Our attitudes, our consciousness, our awareness is in an interplay, is dependent upon the political conditions. And it's very, very difficult to imagine that in a situation of war and occupation and so on, people will not be racist. This is what reality shows them, that Palestinians are dangerous, that Israelis are do atrocities and so on. And on the other hand, we somehow need attitudes to change in order to change the reality. So that's why it's so complicated. But I think personally, I will say my personal view, and it's we cannot wait. I don't feel we can wait until Israelis and Palestinians get over their stereotypes and racism and negative feelings towards each other. Certainly, this is not, I mean, the war needs to end. More than that, the occupation needs to end. And there are people on the ground who are doing what you are asking. Again, not enough, but that's the very partial answer that I have.
Can I speak quickly?
Yes, please. I will just say, so I don't forget, I'm not so good with PayPal, so I couldn't find the link now. But what I did see is that some of you have generously transferred donations to my PayPal account, and at least one of you is Chad. So maybe those who did succeed, if you can write in the chat box, if you could put the link, that would be useful for the others. Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Viva, first of all, I want to salute your courage and your compassion. It's wonderful, and I respect and admire you for that. Thank you so much for that. For me, it's very important to hear from you, an Israeli. Now, I am an Ashkenazi Jew by background. You speaking personally, so honestly and frankly and courageously about what is really happening is really important. I mean, I hear it on the news, I see it on other social media, but to hear it from you personally is extremely important. I thank you for that.
Thank you.
I want to just quickly share, I know we have little time, but I heard a teaching by Tara Brach, you may have heard of.
Yeah.
Anger in this situation. And it was very useful for me. And you shared beautifully how you handle anger. It's very, very similar. But the one additional point, she said, the first is to acknowledge your anger. And I want to add too, that the Dalai Lama has said that when we are angry, we are 90% blinded by that because it's a passionate response and we're not clear about what's really happening. So she said, you acknowledge your anger, but then behind the anger, If you investigate, you will find grief, sadness, you called it, same thing. Acknowledge that. And when you do that, it enables you to access compassion. And that's where I think we need to go. So I just wanted to
Amen.
share.
Yeah, thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. Adrian, if you're still wanting to speak, please unmute yourself and then we will wrap up. Thank you so much, Aviv. Apologies to you and everyone for running over time. I knew this was going to happen.
So I would just say, my question, I think, has been answered, and that's why I put my hand down in the last 3 questions. I really appreciate your talk, and I hope these questions are recorded. Sometimes just the talk is and not the questions, because I feel like the questions we're asking about rage and grief, and what my question was going to be about is trauma and collective trauma. And what I hear in the questions, I hear the trauma, and then it also brings up my own. So I think that, you know, that is what happens. You want to do, as you said, you've been living as an example, Aviv, of what to do. So you don't necessarily have to answer it, because we can see it in how you're answering the questions and in your actions that you've already done. But I do think I wanted to highlight that unprocessed trauma is, as the gentleman was saying, you cannot think clearly. And some of that trauma is intergenerational. It didn't always happen to your body. It may have been your grandmother, your great-grandmother, but you still heard the stories. You still, even if you didn't, you feel it in your body. And we all are experiencing trauma as this unfolds right now. Whether it's someone like you who's right there on the ground, or if you're watching it on your phone. And then, of course, you have your own historical traumas. And I was going to ask you, you know, how can we use practice to to heal? But I think it's been answered in things that people have offered. The one thing I can say, I just wanted to acknowledge, because one of the first steps, it's hard to process trauma when people don't acknowledge it and don't talk about it, that it happened, and it's silent. And that happened, I'm a Black American person, that happened in my family. People don't want to talk about what happened, but it doesn't go away. And I wanted to just mention that here, and I wanted to acknowledge everybody on this call who also stayed for this 2 hours. And I don't know everybody's story, but I did want to say that I do hear that trauma, and I hope that we find a way to heal. And that's what I wanted to share, because if we sat here for 2 hours with you, we really wanted to hear everything that you had to say. So we're just deeply, deeply appreciative. If you have any thoughts on that, you can share. I know we're over time, but that was what my question would have been.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I think you said it very beautifully. I don't have what to add.
Thank you, Aviv, and thank you, Adrian. We are at 12 after 2 or 12 after 9.
9.
So again, thank you so much, everyone. We are still trying to sort out the PayPal account link. Some of you were able to go in. We will email everyone who registered for this talk everything, links and ways to support Aviv's work, which will go directly to the families who've lost a source of income. We will get that together, hopefully in a day or two. Buddhist Action Coalition we are a skeleton crew, just like you are, Aviv, over there. And we are all also volunteers, unpaid. So give us some patience as we get all this together. I don't know how to wrap this up, except may we take responsibility for ourselves. May we take responsibility for our thoughts, words, and actions. May we take responsibility for one another. And thank you everyone for your questions, for your generosity. Aviv, more power to you. Thank you. I don't even know what to say. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you all.
yes, and everyone, let's just breathe for a second and bow to end. Thank you. And
Thank you, everyone. I can just say that it's very, very strengthening and empowering to, you know, to feel your interest and your appreciation. So thank you very, very much.
yes, and we can end the recording there, but we can stay for a couple more minutes to